Hello everyone and welcome to WonderTix. WonderTix is a CRM and ticketing system built for Portland Playhouse, a local theater company. Portland Playhouse has been using Patron Manager, a CRM system created by Salesforce. Portland Playhouse employees have found it very difficult to use the system and handle ticketing in a way that covers the demands of a theater business. This project aims to solve the complexity issues with the theater's current ticketing system by providing functionality in WonderTix that is specific to the theater's needs and offered in a simple, lightweight user interface. The WonderTix product is a website dedicated to Portland Playhouse that allows patrons to purchase show tickets and shop on the customer end, while employees have access to the management of PPH's shows, schedules, and tickets on the admin side, as well as multiple CRM abilities like user management, reporting, and newsletters. And now we can take a look at the demo for our features. Let's start by looking at our ticketing changes. So one of the first things we did was we removed the Manage Events page and switched it to the already existing Showings page. And we also removed all the buttons for Manage Events and changed them all to Showings and all the routes as well. So now if you go to Showings, it just shows all the showings instead of the individual Manage Event page. So let's look at our event management changes. We can do that by adding a new event. Let's call it Hamlet, and description will be a play about Hamlet, and let's add an image URL for it. So to add a showing, we can specify a certain amount of tickets. I'll just add 12 for this first one, and then we'll set a date and a time, just like a random time. And then we can add another one, let's say a little more, 155 this time, and we'll add a ticket option and select the pay what you can ticket type, and we'll add, say, 15 tickets for this one. And then we'll select a time for it. And then also let's add a second ticket type just for VIP, and we'll say 8 tickets. So now we can save this, and it takes us back to our showings page. And now if we press edit event, we can see that everything is pulled up correctly and the ticket types are now displayed in the edit events, which previously wasn't available. And also editing is fixed for our showings. So we can say, let's say 120 now. We want to change this to 120 tickets and change the date. So let's save that. If we go back in and edit, you can see that the ticket and date are changed, or the ticket amount. One thing that we can also look at is the validation changes for the event management. So let's say we wanted to add like Hamlet 2, same description and same picture. Now, if we try to add this one without, say, one of the validation or one of the forms, and we try to save, it'll tell us that it failed to save, and it'll tell us exactly what is missing. So we can add that in and then try again. It'll tell us what else is missing. So a showing must have an event date and event time. So now if we add that in, and we try to save, it'll tell us, oh, the showing must have at least 1 ticket. That's what the sponsor requested. Let's say 15, and then we are finally allowed to save because now we have everything we need. So now we can look at the ticket purchasing page changes we made. Let's say for the first show we made, play about Hamlet. So the first date that we go to, if we want to buy tickets, you can see that it says general admission adult because we didn't specify a ticket type, which is what the sponsor wanted. The sponsor wanted us to not, or wanted to be able to add a showing without specifying a ticket type, and that ticket is automatically generated as a general admission adult. And then you can see that the ticket limit for that ticket is applied correctly, so you can't purchase more tickets than are available. And then we can say get tickets. And then you can see once we go to the cart that the price is reflected correctly for the specific ticket type, and we're able to purchase from here. We also made some changes to the nav where buttons weren't working correctly, and now they work correctly, and we refactored that a bit. Another thing that we added for our ticketing was the Ticket Exchange's front end page. So the sponsor wanted us to design the first part of the Ticket Exchange's page, and we added that in, and then the next team can hopefully work on adding the back end to this page. But this is basically exchanging tickets from one ticket to another for a customer. And then one thing that we improved with documentation was we fully made auto generation for our Swagger docs and made Swagger routes for every single route in our API, basically. And there were some Swagger routes before, but there were very few. So now this should make it easier for the next team to understand what's really going on in the API. One of the more important non-visual features that we added was the Prisma API that translated the current API to Prisma endpoints, and that was used to standardize the backend interfaces and improve our responses. We encountered some unexpected bugs with editing ticket types, and also the Prisma API will need to be integrated fully with the front end. So those were some things that were unexpected, but we communicated those with the sponsor. Our goal for our work on the project was to focus on improving the project's current ticketing features and its database, and improve the overall quality of event management. The ticketing and events system is what every show and ticket for Portland Playhouse is created with, so it's of great importance that it's more user-friendly and error-free. We saw some issues with event management in the front end and back end, and that's what led us to refactor the events UI in the ticketing dashboard and the showings in the database. Another priority for us was to fix bugs in the project, add some improvements to missing functionality, and update documentation to better facilitate a smooth transfer from one capstone team to the next. The project lacked a lot of documentation for various bugs and issues in the code, and we wanted to make sure that no team that signed on was overwhelmed by any surprising bugs or missing functionality.
Our target audience consists of two main groups that will make up the users of WonderTix: the customers and theatergoers, and the Portland Playhouse employees that will use the program for everyday theater management tasks. The customers will provide the most traffic to WonderTix. They can use the website to purchase tickets to many different events and browse their subscriptions and donations, as well as access all the different offerings that Portland Playhouse has to offer. WonderTix will serve as a center for all products that the theater offers and all events that they advertise to theater-going customers. Portland Playhouse employees will use the main functionality of WonderTix, the ticketing and CRM systems. Employees will have access to the admin side of the website to create and manage upcoming plays and tickets that the customers purchase. The main features that we implemented for our capstone cycle are ticket type integration, correcting event management, and standardizing showings in the backend. WonderTix ticket types let admins specify different ticket price points for tickets that are being sold. Prior to our work on the project, ticket types had been introduced in the database and parts of the API, but were not integrated into the ticket purchasing pages or saved and displayed correctly in event management. The user could purchase tickets but could not specify what type of ticket they wanted to purchase. We started by adding a ticket type selector to the ticket purchasing page for each event. Then the selector was tied to the backend ticket types so that a user would be able to see what ticket types were assigned to a specific showing that they were shopping for and choose from the ticket type options. The price difference of a selected ticket type would then be reflected in the cart. Then the ticket type integration was solidified in the event management section of WonderTix. The add event page now saves the ticket types for a showing into the database, and editing an event will display the ticket types for each showing correctly.
The next main feature that was implemented was correction for event management. Previously, adding an event to go on sale would save the event data correctly in the database, but this data could not be recalled correctly or edited in the edit event section. Our changes fixed this issue and made saving and editing events work as intended. Changes to events and showings are saved correctly in the database. Another change that was made for event management was improving the saving of events and showings. The sponsor had wanted saving showings to be easier, since the previous form required you to save each showing individually before submitting the form at the end. Making this change required refactoring the way events were saved and improving the back end of this section. We finished with the events management by removing the Manage Events page completely in favor of the already existing showings dashboard, and redirecting buttons and UI elements to make editing events more streamlined. The third main feature that was implemented was the standardization of showings in the backend and the switch to a new API. The database had inconsistencies with the way showings for an event were represented and used, and this caused it to be more error-prone. We felt that it was best to implement a switch to Prisma and Object Relational Mapping Toolkit. The Object Relational Mapping Tool, or ORM, allows the backend to have consistent models for the data that's requested from the front end of the website. It also allowed us to set up a dynamic sample database for the website that supports migration from one database change to another. This change will make it easier for upcoming teams to query the database and follow consistent models for data in WonderTix.
There were some additional features that we implemented alongside the main features. The first was our documentation improvements, as we believe it was necessary to improve the WonderTix documentation we had for the next team. These would be both the testing docs and the onboarding documentation. Our Swagger docs were extensively expanded so that every route in the front end had a detailed documentation on what kind of requests should be made to the API. The setup instructions in the README were simplified, and the updated onboarding documents were made to be supplied to the next team. All these changes should make it easier for anyone joining the WonderTix cycle to test and understand the code. Another feature was the improved front-end validation of the event management form, and it's to make it more user-friendly and clear, as well as there were some front-end fixes for bugs that made navigation more difficult, as well as fixes for the page errors. And there were various Docker improvements that were added to make the project build more efficiently. We also added confirmation dialogues for ticket purchasing pages to make the user understand when their selection was sent successfully to the cart, and created the front-end start of the ticket exchange page according to the sponsor's request. If we had any more time in the capstone, we would have liked to add the full implementation of the ticket exchanges, as that was one of the priority items for the sponsor in the future. There were also some major features that the sponsor was looking for that we could have worked on, namely the season tickets, adding functionality to the report system, integrating tests, and as well as the deployment.
Now, let's take a look at the architecture of the project. The WonderTix project uses Docker to build containers that run each of the necessary pieces of the application in a virtual development sandbox. The entire front end is built with React and Tailwind CSS. Through the browser, the user interacts with two main sections that make up the client: ticketing and customer relationship management, or CRM. The ticketing dashboard handles the requests for all ticket-related functions like event management, ticket type management, and individual door list tickets. It provides an interface for admins to fully customize their events and tickets. The CRM dashboard allows admins to manage employee user accounts and customer contacts, make tasks, and view reports on users and purchases. The client makes HTTP requests to the API that's built using Node.js, Express, and the Prisma ORM. The API has endpoints that handle the request, and they in turn run SQL queries on the database, searching for the data that the front end needs. This data is retrieved, a response is built, and it's then sent back to the client to update the React components.
We can look at the Prisma implementation in more detail. We began implementing a new API using Prisma. To make this process smooth, we moved the current routes to API 1 and the new ones into API/2. The Postgres database we use in development is built using migrations, and it's now populated using Prisma seeds. To keep the data the same, we ended up exporting the seed data into YAML files, which are processed and then inserted back into the database during the Docker builds. Prisma also provides models and a SQL client, allowing us to create the new routes in a quick and consistent manner. Currently, the front end's only using the old API. We hope that the next team can migrate it to the new API and then delete the old one. For our development process, we use Agile methodology to coordinate a regular workflow with weekly stand-ups and sprints. It took some time to get a good schedule going, but by the second term, we were consistently meeting on the same day each week to discuss our current issues. During the last quarter of our first term, we began implementing bug fixes in pairs and building a foundation for understanding the code. We used this time to get comfortable collaborating with each other using Git, and this helped us get to know our partners better. Overall, correcting the ticket types and event management took the whole length of implementation time and the work of multiple people, since we had some setbacks that delayed the development process somewhat. The Prisma integration took about 4 weeks of solid effort to complete. The rest of the additional features and steps we took range from 1 to 2 weeks of work to complete.
Our team was primarily split into front-end focused members and back-end focused members. Nicole, Logan, Sam, and I worked mostly on front-end issues, and Robert, Andy, Julian, and Tim mostly worked on back-end issues with some front-end work. For the ticket types, Nicole and Logan worked on creating the ticket type selector in the ticket purchasing page. Tim tied the selector to the backend with help from Julian. For event management, Julian, Tim, and I contributed to refactoring and fixing the add and edit event pages. I worked on improving the save functionality and making ticket types display correctly on edit. Tim and Julian both worked on improving event saving and editing. Robert and Andy were vital to upgrading the backend structure of WonderTix. Robert introduced Docker stability changes for a more efficient build. Andy and Robert worked on the Prisma API integration and routes. They also worked to update the Swagger documentation, and Robert updated the README. Nicole, Logan, Sam, and I all worked on other front-end fixes and improvements. I introduced better validation for event management pages and fixed some React errors and warnings. Nicole and Logan added and fixed UI elements in the front end and created the start of the ticket exchanges page. Sam worked on fixing nav behavior and overseeing UI changes for event management. Sam also added new onboarding documentation for future teams and team leads, and he also updated the bug reports on GitHub issues.
We had some unexpected setbacks during a capstone cycle. One of the unforeseen setbacks we experienced was the ticket generation not being properly set up. Our changes to editing events makes editing and creating events save correctly in the database, but currently editing ticket types after they were already initialized does not work correctly and doesn't affect ticket generation. Unfortunately, this is something that we did not have the time to fully address. There will need to be extra care taken to consider what behavior is best when editing ticket types for a showing after they've been generated, and what happens to already purchased tickets. Tickets in a show will most likely need to have their types converted on edit, since the sponsor wants to be able to change unsold ticket details. Another unexpected event that occurred was that we chose not to fully fix some of the broken pages that error out. We had expected that these issues were just front-end bugs, but it turned out that there were a lot of missing routes for multiple pages that caused the errors. I decided that we did not have the required time to introduce implementation to these pages, so we fixed the front end to the best of our abilities and moved on to more important required issues. Unfortunately, we also ran out of time to fully test all the backend routes for the Prisma API. The changes that are needed are outlined in the issues board. and we communicated all these difficulties with the sponsor.
We asked the sponsor for feedback on our progress. This is what they said. Working with Sam and the team was straightforward for this project, and although they did not achieve as much as we had hoped, they did make positive progress on the WonderTix project. Meetings were clearly communicated and always attended. My time and our staff's time was managed efficiently. Sam asked good questions, and this caused some design changes that will benefit the work moving forward. On the whole, it was a positive experience. One of the most important lessons we learned was to start early on implementation. WonderTix is a fairly large capstone project and it requires extra time to get accommodated to the scope of the project, especially if a team is relatively inexperienced. It's a good idea to start with the team on implementation and research as soon as possible during the first term. Another important lesson was to spend more time making sure team members didn't work on areas that could lead to conflicts. It's difficult to manage which team members should handle a bug that comes up if they're working on separate issues but using the same code. In the future, one recommendation for Capstone would be to have one consistent, experienced team leader that oversees the entire project throughout cycles. This would be harder to set up, but it would make sure that the project is managed and designed as well as it can be, and unnecessary changes to the design aren't made. This is just an experimental idea, though.
Thank you so much for watching our presentation. A special thank you to our sponsor Brian and Ben, the previous team lead, for helping out whenever we needed it. We hope you stay tuned to see what WonderTix can offer with the next cycle.